You're scrolling Zillow at 2 a.m. because apparently that's what we do now instead of sleeping, and you've finally found it. Houses that don't cost $500,000. You're looking at $250,000 homes, which sounds almost reasonable until you actually start doing the math. The kitchen still has laminate countertops from 2003 that are peeling at the edges. The carpet is that specific shade of contractor beige that absorbs both light and hope. There's fake wood paneling in the basement that definitely contains asbestos. But hey, it's only $250,000 only. The listing says affordable starter home in great neighborhood, which is realtor code for small, old, and you should feel grateful it exists at this price point. Meanwhile, you're doing mental gymnastics trying to figure out if making $60,000 a year is enough, or if you need to be pulling six figures just to afford what your parents would have called the cheap house. Spoiler, even at $250,000, the math is still brutal. Just differently brutal. And today we're doing something that real estate agents in affordable markets don't want us to do. We're going to calculate who can actually afford a $250,000 house in 2026. Not who the bank will approve, because banks approved subprime mortgages in 2007, but who can legitimately buy one without turning their life into a financial stress simulator where ramen becomes a food group. Let's start with the reality check that might actually surprise you. In dozens of US markets right now, $250,000 homes actually exist. We're talking about real cities like Toledo, Ohio, where the median is under $200,000. Rochester, New York, where homes average $256,000, $900. Parts of the Midwest and South where $250,000 can get you an actual house with actual square footage. But here's the catch, and there's always a catch. Just because these homes exist doesn't mean most people can afford them. The median household income in America is sitting at around $84,000. So we're asking people making $84,000 to afford homes that cost 3 times their annual income. That ratio actually sounds reasonable compared to the 6 times ratio with more expensive homes until you run the actual numbers and realize it's still incredibly tight. But everyone keeps saying $250,000 is affordable. The mortgage calculator says you qualify. Your parents are confused why you're complaining because they paid $65,000 for the first house. So what's the problem? The problem is that affordable and possible are two completely different things. And the gap between them is where your financial stress lives. First, let's talk about the down payment. The old rule was 20% down. That's $50,000 in cash. The median savings account in America has around $8,000 in it, so you're $42,000 short. That's not a gap. That's a chasm. That's the financial equivalent of being asked to dunk a basketball when you're 5'4", and the hoop is on the moon. If you're making $84,000 a year and somehow manage to save 10% of your gross income, which almost nobody actually does, you're saving $8,400 per year. At that rate, it'll take you roughly 6 years to save a 20% down payment. 6 years. And that's assuming housing prices just freeze in place, which, LOL, sure. Now I can already hear some of you going, but Nick, I can just put down 3% with an FHA loan. And you're right, you can put down 10%, which is $25,000, or go even lower with 3.5% FHA at $8,350. Suddenly this seems possible, right? Congratulations. You just unlocked PMI, private mortgage insurance, which is the financial equivalent of a bouncer making you pay a cover charge to protect the club from you. Except the club is a bank, and they're already making money off you in 17 different ways. on a $225,000 loan with 10% down, you're looking at around $60 to $150 per month for PMI. It's money going out the door every month for insurance that protects the bank, not you. Okay, so you somehow found the down payment. Now what? Let's say you put down 10%, which is $25,000. That leaves you with a $225,000 loan. At current interest rates, somewhere in the 6% to 7% range, your monthly mortgage payment lands around $50 to $1,500. That's just principal and interest. Let's add property taxes. In affordable areas with $250,000 homes, you're probably looking at around 1% to 1.5% of your home's value annually. That's roughly $210 to $315 per month. But wait, because, this is my favorite part. Property taxes don't just stay the same. They're like a subscription service you never signed up for. That increases its price every year. Your city decides they need a new park. Your taxes go up. A bird looks at City Hall. Believe it or not, taxes go up. Then there's homeowners insurance. You're looking at anywhere from $800 to $1,500 per year, which breaks down to about $65 to $125 per month. Between 2021 and 2024, insurance costs jumped 24%. So this number keeps climbing. And now we get to the part that nobody tells you about, maintenance. Just because your house costs $250,000 instead of $500,000 doesn't mean things break less often. The water heater doesn't explode any less dramatically. The roof doesn't leak any less aggressively. The general rule is to budget 1% of your home's value per year for maintenance and repairs. On a $250,000 house, that's $2,500 annually, or about $208 per month. And that's assuming nothing major goes wrong. Don't forget the PMI. Tack on another $60 to $150 per month because you couldn't afford to put 20% down. Okay, deep breath. We're about to add this up. Mortgage payment, $1,250. Property taxes, $260. Insurance, $95. Maintenance, $208. PMI, $100. Your total monthly housing cost is now sitting at roughly $1,213. Look at that number. Really look at it. $1,213 per month. That's 25 there, 350 per year just to exist in a house. Here's where the math gets interesting. Financial advisors will tell you that you shouldn't spend more than 28% of your gross monthly income on housing. Banks will approve you if your total debt to income ratio is under 43%. Let's reverse engineer this. If you're spending $2,130 per month on housing, and that represents 28% of your income, you need to be making roughly $90,500 per year. If we use the more lenient 43% rule, you still need to be pulling in around $59,000 annually. And now we arrive at the punchline. The median household income in America is $84,000, which means that unlike a $500,000 house where 80% of households are priced out, a $250,000 house is technically within reach for median income earners. Pause. If you're making around $70,000 to $90,000 as a household, you can technically afford a $250,000 house using conventional lending standards. That's not 10% of people. That's a much larger chunk of America. And this is a huge but, there's a massive difference between can technically afford using the 43% DTI rule and can comfortably afford without your life becoming a constant financial stress test. Because here's what nobody tells you. You're spending about 30% of your gross income on housing. That sounds fine until you realize that gross income is before taxes, before health insurance, before retirement contributions, before anything that actually reduces your paycheck. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Meet a household we'll call the Smiths. Two working professionals pulling in a combined $75,000 a year. they're right in that sweet spot where a $250,000 house is supposed to be perfect for them. Let's watch what happens. Their gross income of $75,000 sounds solid until reality shows up. All right, after federal taxes, state taxes, FICA, and a modest 401k contribution, they're taking home around $4,400 per month. That's their actual money to live on. Now, subtract that $2,113 monthly housing cost, they're left with $2,287 for literally everything else in their lives. One car payment because they share a vehicle. There goes $350 car insurance, another $120 gas, $200, student loans, $250, health insurance deductibles and copays, $150, groceries for two people, $500. We're now at $717 remaining, and we haven't touched clothing, car repairs, medical emergencies, phone bills, internet, utilities, or the psychological need to occasionally leave the house. They can't spontaneously grab dinner out without checking the bank account first. They're at the grocery store having internal debates about whether name brand cereal is worth $2 more than the store brand. They're adults with jobs living like college students who happen to buy a house. So this household is spending 48% of their take-home pay on housing, not 28%, nearly half. And these aren't irresponsible people. They're just trying to live in a house that everyone keeps calling affordable. So here's what that actually feels like day to day. It feels like standing in the grocery store checkout line, doing math in your head about whether you can actually afford the chicken breast you just put in the cart. Every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. Your check engine light comes on and your stomach drops, not because you're worried about your car, because you're worried about the $600 you don't have. Your spouse needs new work shoes and you feel anxiety because that's $80 you weren't planning to spend this month. This is the reality for households earning $75,000 trying to own a $250,000 home. Now imagine what it looks like for a household making $60,000 or $50,000. At those income levels, even a $250,000 house isn't tight. It's mathematical gymnastics. But here's what makes this insidious. The housing market looks at $250,000 and says affordable. The bank looks at your $75,000 income and says approved. The real estate agent says perfect for first-time buyers. Everybody in the transaction is telling you this makes sense, and technically, mathematically, on paper, it does. You qualify, the ratios work. Yeah, but nobody has an incentive to tell you that technically affordable and sustainably comfortable are two completely different concepts. Because once you've signed those papers, you're trapped. You can't just walk away without destroying your credit, losing your down payment, and owing more money on top. So people stay. They stay in homes they can technically afford, but can't comfortably enjoy, working jobs they might hate because they can't risk income disruption, wondering why home ownership feels more like a trap than a dream. You know what the wildest part is? We've convinced ourselves that $250,000 is cheap. It's affordable. It's what you should be grateful to find in 2026. Let me give you some perspective. My dad bought his first house in 1988 for $87,000. He was making $35,000 a year. That's 2.5 times his income. Today, that same ratio would mean buying a house for $210,000 when you make $84,000. And guess what? Those houses exist. Toledo, Rochester, parts of the Midwest where you can find homes under $200,000, but we don't talk about those markets because they're not sexy. They're Rust Belt cities and small towns where $250,000 actually gets you a decent house instead of a starter home with potential. We didn't get lazy. We didn't start eating too much avocado toast. The system changed, and then it had the audacity to tell us that $250,000 for 1,800 square feet is a deal we should be grateful for. Let me tell you the harsh truth. For probably 40% to 50% of American households, even a $250,000 home is not comfortably affordable, not sustainably, not without accepting a level of financial tightness that means every unexpected expense feels like a crisis. This isn't about personal failure. This is about a housing market where even the affordable options require significant income and perfect financial execution. Home prices have increased roughly 400% since 1990. Median household income up about 180% in the same period. The math doesn't work. It's never worked. It's not going to suddenly start working because you found a house for only $250,000. We keep telling people that homeownership is essential for building wealth, but we ignore the part where you have to survive the mortgage first. We keep perpetuating the myth that if you just budget better and work harder, you can make it happen, but you can't budget your way out of a structural affordability crisis. That's like trying to bail out the Titanic with a coffee mug. Sure, you're doing something, but the ship is still sinking. What you can do is understand the actual numbers. Maybe that decision is to target an even cheaper house, $180,000 or $200,000 in markets where those exist. Maybe it's to keep renting and invest the difference. Maybe it's to acknowledge that homeownership simply isn't viable right now without accepting financial stress you're not willing to live with. And that's okay, because there is no prize for buying a house you can technically afford but can't comfortably enjoy. There is no trophy for being house poor at $250,000 instead of $500,000. The real question isn't whether you can technically get approved. Banks will approve terrible decisions. The real question is whether owning that house will actually improve your life or just transfer your money to a bank while you stress about every unexpected expense. So what happens when you ignore this and buy anyway? You convince yourself it'll be fine. You budget. You can make $2,613 a month work because you don't spend money on stupid stuff. So you buy the house, month one, you make the payment. It's tight, but you did it. Then month three hits and your car needs new brakes and tires. That's $900 you didn't budget for. You put it on a credit card. Month 6, the water heater starts making concerning noises. The plumber says it should be replaced. That's around $200. You don't have it. You tell the plumber you'll think about it and pray it lasts another year. Month 9, one of you gets sick and misses a week of work. Your income drops by $600 that month. Suddenly you're scrambling, juggling which bills to pay first. And that emergency fund you were supposed to build, it never happened because there is nothing left to save. This is the reality of being house poor at $250,000. You own a house technically, though the bank really owns it, but you can't afford to maintain it properly. You can't afford to enjoy it. Every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. Every financial decision is made through, can we still make the mortgage? And because $250,000 homes are considered affordable, we've normalized this struggle. Oh, you're stressed about money. Well, it could be worse. At least you didn't buy a $500,000 house. Be grateful. It's like we've agreed to pretend that struggling to afford homeownership at any price point is just part of being an adult, rather than a symptom of a broken system. So let me give you permission to do something radical. You can choose not to play this game just because a house costs $250,000 instead of $500,000. You can look at that 2.1 13 monthly payment run the real numbers and decide that having $700 left over each month isn't enough margin for life, you can keep renting. Like, you can save and buy an even cheaper house in a less sexy market. You can wait for your income to increase. You can acknowledge that home ownership, even affordable home ownership, might not be right for your current situation, because here's what actually builds wealth. It's not owning a house you can barely afford, it's having margin in your budget. It's being able to save consistently. It's not having to choose between fixing your water heater and contributing to retirement. It's sleeping at night without anxiety. Real wealth is freedom. It's not equity trapped in a house you can't afford to maintain. That's not wealth. That's just expensive jail with slightly lower monthly payments. Like, the financial industry has convinced people that any home ownership is better than no home ownership, that buying is always better than renting. But they're selling you a product. They profit when you buy, not when you make smart decisions. Nobody makes money when you say, no thanks, this doesn't work for me, even at $250,000. So if you're sitting there feeling like even affordable homes aren't actually affordable, feeling like maybe you're not failing, but the system is failing you, you're right. You're not crazy. You're not bad with money because you can't make $2,113 a month work comfortably on a $75,000 income. You're not failing at adulthood because you refuse to financially stress yourself just to say you're a homeowner. And I know what you're thinking. Nick, this is depressing. Where's the hope? Here's the hope. You're not crazy. You're not failing. You're just trying to play a game that's been rigged against you. And the first step to fixing a rigged game is seeing that it's rigged. The solution isn't life hacks or side hustles or cutting out your daily coffee. The solution is systemic change. But until that happens, the best thing you can do is refuse to participate in your own financial destruction. Here's what you actually need to do. Run your real numbers, factor in all the costs we talked about. Be honest about your income stability. And if the math shows a $250,000 house would leave you with $700 a month for everything beyond housing and basics, ask yourself if that's actually livable. There's no shame in saying, this doesn't make sense for me right now, even at $250,000. The real win is making decisions based on reality rather than social pressure, on math rather than emotion, on your actual financial situation rather than what you wish it could be. That's how you avoid becoming another person who bought an affordable house and discovered that affordable and comfortable are two very different things.